know it's very difficult.
Steve, how about you stop telling me what I can and can't say, love? Just, I mean, in terms of this decision, I mean, just recap for people in terms of, I mean, difficult to keep track with the strike days. There are lots of media organisations putting out, days when there are different strikes, whether it's nurses or railway workers or mail workers, whoever it is. But the RMT were originally planning to go on strike 13th, 14th, 16th and 17th of December, also strikes in January, timetabled as well. But effectively that would have mean basically no trains or very few trains between the 12th and the 18th of December. That's the 18th being the Saturday before Christmas, and now we're looking at from 24th to 27th. Who are we kidding? It'll be the 23rd to the 28th. What do you make of this decision to strike over the Christmas period? It's not just commuters. It's not just people trying to get away with the festive period. This is, I mean, I'm sorry, let's call it what it is. It's holding family Christmas to ransom.
Yeah, well, Julia, look, I mean, obviously it's going to have an impact, and that's why those dates were chosen. But I have to say, we've had this conversation before. I think this is a bit of a Christmas pantomime. I think that there's going to be an offer made by the government in the run-up to those dates to get those dates called off. We've already seen an offer accepted in Scotland, which was 5% plus a £750 bonus. So I think that the government know what they've actually offered is not acceptable. No one's going to accept a 2 years real term pay cut. Inflation's 12% this year. It's forecast to be at least 8% next year. So if they accepted 9% over 2 years or 8% over 2 years, which the train operating companies have been offered, then that's a 12 or an 11% real terms pay cut.
I mean, it is. And that's where a lot of people are, isn't it? That actually a lot of people who largely be opposed think, well, people getting a big pay rise, for nothing. A lot of people will understand that they're not getting pay rises commensurate with the inflation, and they'll be saying, well, good on these people. They've got a strong union. They're able to do it. The question is, of course, is whether anything that the government or the train operating companies backed by the government could offer will be accepted to them other than the full claim. We're told we've never actually had the full amount, asked for, but one would assume it is more than inflation. The government has said we're looking at a £28 billion cost if every public sector worker, which to all intents and purposes railway workers are, got inflation pay rise.
They're not, Julia.
But they are. The money is basically backed by.
No, that's completely wrong. The train operating companies are independent companies.
They are independent, but the money has to be signed off effectively by the government.
The money's being paid at the minute, and it's currently been given hand over fist to shareholders.
True.
who have had billions of pounds. Now, if that money, if you're running a company and you can't pay your staff enough, but you're giving billions of pounds to shareholders, then there's something wrong. That money's got to go to the staff instead. And we've got workers all over Britain. I mean, we've got 100,000 person vacancies in the NHS now because people can't afford to live on the wages that they're being paid. And we can't have working class people pushed into poverty by a government who's refusing to put enough tax on the oil and gas companies to stop the profiteering and the scalping that's going on. I mean, they're not just making profits, they're making mega profits.
Oil and gas companies are, but the thing is, even if we did put a lot of the taxes on it being called by Labour and what they were planning to do, you wouldn't touch the sides of the cost of that sort of inflation-proof pay rise across the board for public sector workers. Might be able to cover it with railway workers, but then everyone would say, why have the railway workers got that?
Well, exactly. So then you would have to look at closing tax loopholes that allow people to not pay tax and offshore their tax burden.
Look, I think most people will be with you on that. I'm with you on that. The reality is a lot of the time they don't do these things because it doesn't work. I think they should do more. I completely agree with you on that. But at the end of the day, we are where we are right now, and we've got people who aren't going to be able to see their families at Christmas. They don't own a car, otherwise they wouldn't have booked a sodding train in the first place, because who in their right minds would travel by train now at this time of the year with all the strikes and the uncertainty?
Why do you bother invite me onto your programme when you just talk at me? Do you not want my views?
You've had plenty of time to talk. We've just been listening to you.
You just, it's a typical Julia Hartley Brewer, a stream of consciousness.
Love, you've been talking away. I've been listening to you.
I'll tell you what, let's take it in turns. You keep quiet now for a little bit, and then I'll talk, okay? Right, Julia, what we need to do is engineer a situation in this country where we have enough money to pay public sector workers. We have to tax the rich. We have to shut down the offshore tax havens, and we've got to tax the energy companies. And
you said all that already. Sorry, was I allowed to interrupt when you said the same thing a second time?
No, you're not. I know it's very difficult for you, but
you just said that already.
We've got to do that, and then we've got the money to pay every public sector person. Now, the reality is now we're going into a period of stagflation, which means we're in a recession, and we've got at the same time very, 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 very high rates of inflation. And the way to get out of stagflation, believe it or not, is they actually give inflation pay rises, because then at least the part of the economy that's in recession will not be going into recession, because people will have money to spend. Now, a lot of people, neoliberal monetarists, will say that inflation's the main enemy. I disagree. And that's only a part of the theory of economics. If you look at Keynesian economics, if you look at even mercantilist economics, then they would all say that you have to spend your way out of stagflation. You have to avoid prices of overproduction by actually giving people money to spend.
There are perfectly good arguments for everyone to get a pay rise to match inflation as individuals, or in particular industries or public sector areas, because it's not fair that people should get poorer. They've done nothing wrong. They're doing their job and they're earning their money, and they've got less to show for it. They can buy less for it, and they're poorer. Absolutely. The trouble is, then you get into that spiral up of inflation. I genuinely completely understand why the rail unions are doing what they're doing, or why they reject these offers. But I also completely understand why the government says we haven't got the money. And I completely understand we should be taxing the very rich more. They're already paying a lot of money, but we should be taxing different kinds of income at higher rates, capital gains tax and the like. I don't see why it shouldn't be at the same rate as someone going out to work, et cetera, and some of these big profiteering companies. There are lots of things we can do. But we are where we are right now, and people are missing out on Christmas because this one particular union has this power. They're able to hold the country to ransom, and they've got power that other people don't have.
You go off at 100,000 tangents. I mean, the fact of it is, right, let's deal with the matter of the railways and not talk about other public sector people then, if that's what you want to talk about, because the railways, by and large, are not in the public sector.
I know, you said that. You're off talking about mercantilism, for God's sake.
I know it's very difficult.
Steve, how about you stop telling me what I can and can't say, love? Maybe that's how you normally talk to women. I don't know, but don't do it on my show, love.
Oh dear, there we go.
Well, it's boring. Just answer the question.
Snowflake, Julia.
Just answer the question. It's boring, Steve.
Dear, this doesn't.
You spend more time moaning than you do answering the question.
Okay, all right. Well, be quiet then. I'll answer your question.
Oh,
okay, Lord. Julia. The railway is not in the public sector. Most of the railway is in the private sector, and the money's already been put into the railway. But it's
by the public sector. £6 billion taxes money went into it.
It's being kept by the train operating companies, and it's been given out to their shareholders. Now, if you're accusing of holding people holding at their ransom, aren't those companies that are refusing to pay the staff, but instead giving their shareholders money, holding the company to ransom? Well, there you go. That's your answer then, isn't it? And
yeah, we got there. When you finished whinging and moaning, you managed to answer my question. Well done. Well done. God, the long winter nights must fly by in the Headley household. How do you think?
I can imagine your husband wouldn't be coming home very early. I'll tell you that.
Trust me, he's very happy to come home, Headley. Steve, just finally, how do you think this is going to be resolved?
Well, I've already said how I think it's going to be resolved, so please don't interrupt me when I give you the answer. I think it's going to be resolved because this is a pantomime. I've already told you it's a pantomime. What we're having here is the government know exactly what it takes to resolve this. They've resolved it in Scotland. They've given a 5% pay rise plus a £750 bond, which I believe is an appalling deal and should never have been accepted by.
So how's it going to be resolved? If you've already told me.
Well, that's how it's going to be resolved. They're going to come up with this.
They're going to pay the money.
They're going to pull the rabbit out of the hat. I don't think they're going to pay enough money. And by the way, the RNT leadership have already put this out the referendum on Network Rail, which is a 5% and a 4%, which is a pay cut. I can't believe that they're going to put this to the membership. You elect the leadership to lead. If the deal's not good enough to recommend, they shouldn't be putting it out for a referendum.
Steve, I know you don't like this, but I'm going to have to end this conversation now just because we've got other people to talk to.
I'm absolutely got it, Julia. Nothing I'd rather do than sit and talk to you and be interrupted.
Oh, you little snowflake, you. Right back at you for RMT Senior Assistant General Secretary Steve Headley. Candice Holdsworth is joining me all this morning. He was just repeating himself. You have to interrupt some people because they'll just carry on. Trade union leaders will just keep going forever until you just interrupt them and stop it.
Oh, you can't divert them. They will stick to their message and they will make it.
He makes some good points. I mean, it annoys me, but he does make some fair points. I mean, look, there is a real-time pay cut. And we are seeing huge amounts of taxpayers' money going into coffers of the shareholders and the managing directors and things of these trail operating companies. Does he have a point there?
Yes, a lot of the stuff they say is very common sense. And when unions aren't being ideological, if they're not just opposing the government, they can actually contribute to society becoming wealthier. There are loads of periods throughout history. Strong union membership,
crucial role.
High salaries, job stability. They have such a good role to play. I think maybe we're all a bit tainted by the 1980s where things were very ideological.
Yeah, and I think for a lot of these RMT people, it still is. I mean, they're sort of card-carrying, commies, but they'd love a big battle with the Tory government, but they can still have a valid point as well when it comes to their members. The question is whether we can afford to deal with this.